Hello and welcome to another LinkedIn Live with me, your host, James Highett-Smith, founder of Clark Smith. Delighted to be here today. Today, we're covering the topic of executive hiring. This is a masterclass to talk about how to improve hiring outcomes, what's evolving, what's developing in the world, and how we can um, really improve hiring outcomes for the world. So let's dive into the topic. Most businesses today, I find, making the mistake, particularly at senior level hiring, of viewing it as quite a transactional process. And what I mean by that is they've got a very fixed idea of what it is that they want, and they've always done it this way. And really, it's about looking at the future and seeing it as a strategic opportunity to make a big impact in the organization. Now, we deal mostly with startups, scale-ups, some sort of either venture or private equity-backed organizations that are really trying to grow and expand. We've moved away from a world of cheap money, growth at all costs, to much more profitable, efficient growth, which means not just focus on top line, but focus on bottom line, EBIT, and also cash generation for organizations. And there's quite a big shift for a lot of organizations out there. And it's still the same idea that it's people that make business. Now, with the advent of automation, growth in machine learning, AI, there's ever greater desire to achieve more with less. And one of the ways that we can do this is by making sure that each and every hire that we make, particularly at a senior level, has an outsized impact on growth. So I think there's so many relations and relevance when it comes to looking at sports, whether it be football or rugby. We've just finished the Six Nations. Rugby's a game I used to play when I was growing up and loved it. You have functional specialists in that organization, but the ball still needs to move between the hands of every individual. And different phases of play, different people have different roles in the structure and systems that are produced. So you've always got to be thinking in terms of not just an inch wide and a mile deep, but more in terms of that T-shaped leadership, T-shaped structure. How do these things come together and work? It's not one size fits all. Each organization is different. So what we're going to talk about today mostly is the setup phase of a hiring process, because for me, that's one of the most important stages of the process, because from that, everything else can really go through the flow of the process. So let me just show this hiring funnel. You got pre-funnel stage and the hiring funnel stage. So with the pre-funnel stage is probably one of the most important phases of the setup and structuring of your search process, to make sure that you are solving for the right problems. You have engaged stakeholders, invited feedback from the people that the role will impact, whether it's the board, investors, whether it's different functional leaders as well. Because getting that 360-degree view will give you different perspectives, different attitudes, and you can use that to distill into a matrix that then, everyone can coalesce around and can align around. So really, this pre-funnel stage is one of the most important areas to look at when you're thinking about hiring in general, but certainly for senior level hiring. So Simon Sinek said it, you want to start with why. You can get into the what, the how, but if you don't understand why you're trying to bring in a certain role, what the impact is going to be on the organization, not just short term, but medium and long term, you're going to struggle to articulate exactly the value that it's going to bring in the short, through the life cycle of that individual in the business. And it means that you're more looking at it from a transactional perspective rather than a strategic opportunity to bring in differentiated knowledge and experience. The fundamental truth is that hiring is very subjective. We all have our own perspectives, our own likes, wants, and preferences, but the real key is about trying to move it to more of an objective profile that you're looking for, because that will just take away a lot of the biases that we as humans, we as individuals have, and can really have an assessment criteria that multiple stakeholders can get behind. So really focusing on why you're trying to solve this problem is the ultimate starting point of this. Now, when we're starting a process, I tend to use a scorecard to help build our search matrix. So let me show you what I mean. Now, this is just a sample scorecard that we've used multiple times. And here we're going to set out the vision, the purpose, the outcomes, and the attributes, both hard and soft skills that we are looking for. And we want to do it in a document that we can socialize with the stakeholders and really get people onto the same page so that then we can design what the hiring process looks like, what the assessment phase is going to look like. Everything can permeate from this document at this very early pre-funnel stage. So if you want a copy of this, you can DM me. Happy to share it, as well as also our kind of hiring flow, hiring funnel. So before we get into that, you want to start talking to your wider hiring committee, hiring group, as to what they see as the important part. So I'm going to give you an example. We're looking for a board member for a private equity-backed business, and the CEO had a particular view of what they wanted in this new board member. The private equity owners might have had different views. We didn't know that it was difficult to get to really ask them and understand what their view and vision and ideas were about this. So as the external search partner, I designed a questionnaire. I interviewed each of the board members individually to avoid groupthink, so we didn't have the highest paid person's opinion dominating the outcome of it. And through that process, got to understand the different priorities, the different values that they were looking for, and essentially the outcomes that they all wanted. pulled together this data into our search matrix, and eventually into our hiring scorecard. And then we had a forum to share the results of that and really align the stakeholders so that everybody was on board with exactly the same thing that we were looking for. What this meant was that everybody had their own chance to put their own perspective and viewpoints. They also had a chance to put their own priorities in place, their own thoughts and feedback. And through the process, managed to distill all of this into that scorecard. Every single individual was aligned in terms of what we're looking for and how we're going to find it. We could then design the go-to-market process for this position. Where we're going to find this person? What does a typical profile look like? What does a stretch profile look like? What does an out-the-box profile look like? Because we want to be able to use this as an opportunity to, bring in different ideas, different perspectives into a business. Now, this is where innovation happens. It's about taking two different ideas that haven't been connected together and bringing them. And this is what I mean by hiring should be a strategic opportunity, not just a transaction to fill a role. It should be the opportunity to propel your business forward, to bring in new ideas, new perspectives into that. And so by moving it away from being a purely subjective, individual, perspective-driven process, we aligned everybody around the objective criteria that they all agreed on and could design a process for what that might look like. Taking it back a step, I did a survey last year for business leaders around sort of expectations coming into 2025. And one of the big themes that came out of that was the goal of trying to do more with less. I think better articulated it is more, how do we achieve more with less or the same? About productivity, optimization, efficiency. So we've gone away from these times of growth at all costs, double down on go-to-market, bums on seats, and that'll have exponential growth in terms of the impact on top-line revenue. We now have to have much better focus on bottom line, unit economics, profitability, and cash as well, which requires a different set of skills and a different focus from leaders in organizations. Combine into that the advent of these technologies that are rapidly advancing and evolving. We want people that have more of an understanding of generalist kind of overlay type roles, where they will not just be very focused on one narrow area, but they can really translate into different functions and have a truly connected organization. Going back to our sports analogy, we see with football teams, soccer teams, if you're in the US, interchangeable roles within a system, within a framework. And that's how business is evolving as well. So we're seeing the structures, the frameworks of organizations evolving to be a little bit more flexible rather than very rigid. And that gives greater autonomy to your leaders to have oversight and input into different silos within the organization. But we want to move away from those silos to a really cohesive, well-drilled organization that is working towards the same common goals. So coming back to the scorecard. So once you've socialized that, you've built the common themes and ideas from individuals as to what they are looking for, making sure that they are aligned. You want to then start distilling that into that scorecard. So going back to our scorecard. So vision, what is the vision mission of the business, and how is this role going to impact that? Here I've used an example of a commercial sales director role, partly because it can be simpler in terms of how we articulate some of that value, but different functional areas will have different key criteria that we are looking at and solving for. It could be operational stability. It could be new product development. It could be net promoter score with, it could be retention. There are a number of kind of key criteria that investors, CEOs, and executives all will look at the metrics of their business. Now, once you've kind of understood how this role plays into the wider overall strategy and vision for that, you want to distill that down into what is the purpose of this role specifically in that. So it could be a growth orientated role. It could be more towards, bringing in a different perspective, or a shift in a pivot in the business of where they're going, an associated market, or a new product line that it's working towards. Once we have those in place, then we want to look at what are the measurable specific outcomes, your OKRs, KPIs for this role. What does success look like, short, medium, and long term? Because we need to think and process about what are we solving for? What does great look like? Because once we're very clear on that, we've paused, reflected, and documented what's worked in the past, but also, where are we trying to get to, where are we trying to move towards, that will permeate itself into what those OKRs are, and be specific. So this is a great opportunity to really kind of understand, well, what's the impact? What's the measurable outcomes that we are solving for with this hire? And again, on the right hand side there, you can see that there's opportunities to add in comments and commentary and examples from individuals. We'll come on to the assessment piece in a second. We also want to look at the skills, the attributes, the competencies of an individual, because people are different, have different strengths, different weaknesses, different opportunities. So if we can go through this self-reflective process with our wider leadership team or investors as well, we can understand what are the key competencies that we are hiring for. Can play into a little bit of culture. What is the culture that we're trying to build? What are the strengths of the team? How do we need leaders to operate? A number of different areas, but you don't want to make this an exhaustive list. You want to prioritize top 5, maximum 10 areas that you're really focusing on through this process. So once we have our scorecard, we've got an alignment with the stakeholder group. Then we can start putting into place what a go-to-market and assessment process might look like. So going back to our funnel, we are still in this pre-funnel stage, working out exactly what needs to happen. But we're moving through these phases towards what our go-to-market of hiring might look like: outbound, inbound, target companies, etc. That will all come in this kind of final stage. So we've designed it. We've gotten alignment, buy-in, stakeholders. Now with that scorecard, we can start looking at how we're going to assess for these qualities, these aspects of the individual. We could be looking at their experiences, what they've done in different roles in companies. Have they been in similar type organizations? Have they been through similar types of processes? Have they done something different? How is that going to work? Are they able to translate that into our world, our organization? I'll give an example of where something didn't work out, because I think that's always useful. Is we were working with the business, building a new quality organization for the company, and they're in the mobility space. Automotive has very well established quality organizations in their business, and we hope that moving someone from a large automotive organization where they've done some startup type of work into that smaller organization where they could build something from scratch could work. But in reality, they struggled without the backdrop and structure that the large automotive firms afforded them. So we want to be cognizant of some of the challenges, some of the pitfalls that can happen when people are moving industries. But we can assess for that. We can, be quite specific and targeted in how we evaluate if that's going to be the right thing or not. So with that scorecard, you can then start looking at what does the assessment phase of our search process look like? Who is going to be involved? Who are going to be the interviewers? Is it going to be in one-on-one interviews? Is it going to be panel interviews? Are you going to have people from different functions in there? HR? What are the roles that they're going to play? Some of the worst interview processes I've seen have been where a candidate just repeats their CV story time and time again as they meet different individuals. The experience it gives to the candidate is like you're not listening. They feel that you're unstructured, you don't know what you're doing, because they just feel like they're repeating themselves constantly. You want each interview to be intentional and strategic. So each interviewer will naturally have certain strengths and capabilities. Someone from more of a product or tech perspective could look more at the process elements of how they do, the structures and playbooks that they work with. HR can look at more of your management leadership style, how they deal under pressure, how they deal with different circumstances, or underperformance, etc. So what you want is, an average interview is about an hour long, right? That's a lot of time invested from a candidate perspective and also from a business perspective. You want to maximize the value that you can get through each hour of that process without making a process like 20 hours long, because everyone's spoken to them for so much and gone over the same ground. So make sure that at each phase the interviewer is looking at a different aspect of their experience, tie that back to the scorecard, and get them to respond and circulate their feedback to the group before the next interview. So if there's flags, a flag that they want to highlight to someone else to investigate further, we can do that in real time rather than waiting till the end everybody comes together, and all of a sudden you realize that there's things that haven't been investigated further through a process, and you're kind of at a stage where we're not 100% sure about this. We still want some certainty, so we're going to keep going. Terrible state of affairs to get to. You want to address these regularly as you go through the process so that you can deal with any issues as they come up in real time. So build into your assessment phase that regular feedback sessions, people sharing different opinions and thoughts, because people are going to come from different perspectives, and you want to embrace that feedback. You really want to bring those differentiated ideas to the table, so that because it can give others a different perspective as well. You want to, by empowering those people around it, you'll have them fully bought into the hiring process. And it's not hiring by committee. At the end of the day, you're going to have a responsible hiring manager. You might want to build a RACI model. Who is going to be the ultimate decision maker? Who has an input? Who is just there for opinions? But you want to be clear about that from the beginning. You'll notice we haven't even gotten into what that go-to-market process looks like for the hiring. And the reason is because the heavy lifting needs to happen up front. It's really worth investing that time as you go through that process, particularly in the modern day and age where things, the world, technology is evolving at such a rapid pace. We're seeing optimism, but there's still a lot of caution and hesitancy out there. So whilst you have that, utilize that time so that when you are solving for a particular problem, you are really super crystal clear on what it is and why you're solving for it. That way you can really just build that whole process and extrapolate it out, and it makes everything else easier as you work towards the right hire, that high impact person that is really going to transform and drive your business forward, because that's the ultimate goal. So be strategic, be intentional throughout that process. With the scorecard in place, with the assessment phase mapped out, planned out, diarized, you can start that go-to-market process. What are the target landscape look like? And I think a lot of what I see companies missing as they go through that process is, as recruiters, I've always said this, we sit in a privileged position outside of organizations. When you're talking to individuals about their career, they'll be very open and share information freely with you. You can get incredible insights. What is happening in the market, what works, what doesn't work, where are they seeing the markets going, what are opportunities look like, what are the models and frameworks that they're seeing and experimenting with in their organization. What does benchmarking look like? Are there evolutions in organizational design? All of this market intel is a byproduct of the search process. And it's something we do with our clients is we share this information as we go through the process. We have regular cadence with our hiring teams to share some of those insights. And that's why it's an opportunity to also think outside the box as well, to not just say, well, we do it like this, we need to look at it the same way, we'll pay more, but we're going to get someone that's going to do what they've already done and probably just optimize it a little bit. We can use this to really transform organizations and think outside the box and look at things differently, all within reason. I think one of the areas where hiring managers get particularly stuck is they're trying to please other people around them. I was having this conversation, about how investors often sort of look and sound the same because there's a level of comfort to the backgrounds that they've looked at and seen before. So even though the world evolves and changes, some people will have this attitude, well, if I take someone from a McKinsey, Bain, BCG, for example, and it doesn't work out, well, the wider stakeholders will say, well, that didn't work out because it was a bad apple, but you did the right thing in hiring from those types of organizations. Sometimes the individual can feel like, well, I don't, that's not the best person for the job, but if something for whatever reason goes wrong, then it won't be just on me because I went, I challenged the status quo or went against the norm. And again, this is really where having that alignment, those conversations up front, can deal with those issues before they arise. So if there's one thing I'm going to ask you to take from our masterclass today, is put the work in up front. If your search process is set up, the right matrix, the right scorecard, the right funnel, everything else becomes 10 times easier as you go through the process. Invite those stakeholders, get their feedback, get their input, align them, and everything will work out well from there. Thank you so much for listening to me today. If you want to find out more, you can contact me on LinkedIn, message me. You can go to our website at www.clarksmith.co.uk. I encourage you to listen to our podcast. You can find episodes on YouTube. We'll put the links down below. Or subscribe to our newsletter. So thank you so much for listening today. If you've got any comments or there's particular topics you want to find out more about, don't hesitate to get in touch. But thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.